Thanks, Wendy. I'm just going to share my screen here. Right. Thank you, everyone. Before I get started, I just want to thank so much Stacy and everyone who's been involved in planning this event. At RfSC, we're really, really lucky. We get to work incredibly closely with RDS, and they're always wonderful at putting on these events to kind of raise awareness about the call. So as Wendy mentioned, I am the Senior Program Manager for RfSC, and I'm also here with my colleague Rifat, who's the Program Manager. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview about RfSC, a bit of our features. Rifat's going to talk about some key figures. We'll show you a little bit of some of the projects that have come through and the types of topics we fund. And then I'll pass over to Chris for a bit to talk about the committee perspective and his insights as chair for RfSC. So first and foremost, some of you may be very familiar with RfSC. This might be a completely new world for you, the social care landscape. Either way, I'll tell you about some of our following features. So leading up into April 2022, we were an annual call, and there was 3 million allocated per call for RfSC. So RfSC is a two-stage committee process, which means all applications are assessed by a single national funding committee. And it's a very diverse committee, and that includes social care researchers, academics, social workers, practitioners, members of the public, many people with lived experience of accessing social care as well. However, this year, very excitingly, and this event is perfectly timed, we've had some exciting changes that have happened in the NIHR and also in RfSC. First and foremost, in April 2022, the NIHR changed its name to the National Institute for Health and Care Research, which really reflects its ongoing commitment to funding excellent social care research. And to line up with this name change, RfSC has now grown to a biannual call, which means there's 2 calls a year, which means double the funding going into funding social care research through RfSC. Another very exciting change, and I'm sure people have questions about later on, is the inclusion of children and young people's social care research. So from 2019 up into April 2022, previously we only funded adult social care research, but now we've made this exciting change to bring in portfolio of children and young people's social care. I think we'll have a little bit more detail about our figures from Rifat, but one thing to really flag at the start here about RfSC is that we actually have calls currently open, which means that one opened in May 25th, which is going to close in September 14th. And then we'll have stage 2 meetings in November, and our stage 2 will open in December. Another thing to flag also, because we're a biannual call, this means we're going to have another call opening in the fall. And again, just to reiterate, this will welcome applications for children, young people's, and adult social care. I'm going to pass over now to Rifat, who's going to talk a little bit more about some of our key figures for RfSC, some of our statistics.
Thank you, Sylvia. If we just have the next slide, please. So as Sylvia mentioned, we started in 2019, and so we have completed 4 really exciting years and reaching from strength to strength. So this slide contains some of the statistics from the portfolio. I'm not going into too much detail of all the granularities of it, but I just want to flag a couple of interesting points that we can reflect on. So you can see that in 2019, we had a really high number of applications, 54. And that was because it was RFPB pilot social care, and RFPB was a really established program. So a lot of people applied through that pilot call. But from 2020, when it became a complete RfSC call, there is a really steady pattern of how many applications we are getting, how many applications are going to stage 1 and stage 2, and the fund, and how many are funded. In 2021, there was a slight decrease in the number of applications that we got. So we got 26, and that's probably because of the impact of the COVID. But that has actually been quite steadily increased in 2022. You can see that we received total of 34. 23 was assessed in stage 1, and then stage 2, the meeting is in July, we'll be looking at 16 applications. With that, I just want to have your attention on RfSC at a glance on the right-hand side. So a total submission of 150 applications in these 4 years. And we did actually assess 109 applications in stage 1. So it's 72% of total of what we received. So we really want to help researchers to have the best of the feedback from our committee. And then from 109, we invited 61 applications to stage 2. It is more than 50% of the stage 1 applications that's been invited to stage 2. And once you finish your stage 1 and stage 2, the chance of success is even higher, because we funded 29 applications out of 61, which is 64%, quite high than the regular RFPB programs. So, and with all the things, all the projects that we have funded, we have spent 7.25 million in the last 3 years, because we have the call for still pending, to improve the social care research in England. And we are really working hard with all the colleagues to keep on doing that. Although we funded 29 projects through RfSC, at the moment our portfolio has 31 projects. And I'm just going to explain the reason in the next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. So even if RfSC is and has been an annual call, it actually maintained a really agile and adaptive outlook to respond to any of the national priorities and social care priorities that came up over the years. So from 2020 onward, we did work with RFPB, with other NIHR programs to respond to any of the national priorities. So for example, in 2021, there was a rapid mental health in the north, mental health call in the north, that came out of the understanding that the research in mental health in North is not as great as it should be. So RfSC again took part in that rapid mental health call, and we did fund 2 projects through that rapid call. And because of this continued need of social care research and mental health intersectionality and the national priority of dementia calls, RfSC then had its own 2-stage social care, mental health, and dementia calls. The stage 1 meeting just took place in May 2022. There are some conditional fundings. Obviously, I can't give the details of that. So again, the portfolio is really expanding. In addition to all the changes, all the exciting things that we have done, in 2021, 2022, RfSC is also the first ever to pilot the NIHR Equality, Diversity, Inclusion, Addition and Funding Call, which was open to all 31 researchers from the RfSC portfolio. And the response was high. We received 11 applications and 7 were funded. So again, it's a really exciting and agile call that we are working within. And the next slide, please. So from the portfolio to the support, RfSC, again, it supports social care researchers, applicants, and award holders at each step of their journey. We have a voluntary pre-submission form that many prospective researchers take a benefit of. If you complete the pre-submission form, we'll look at the outline and we'll let you know if it is within the remit of the RfSC or whether you should go to any other programs. Again, it's voluntarily. And as Sylvia mentioned in the beginning, we are really fortunate. We always work very closely with RDS colleagues when there is a new call, so that the information is reached to you in good time. RfSC also has a very interesting and important workshop on research impact for successful stage 2 applicants, and that happens between stage 1 and stage 2. And it is with the NIHR impact team, and the idea is as much as to help you to carve out your own impact of that project, but also to think about what would impact look like in the RfSC for your RfSC research in future. So again, this is the support that many researchers have taken so far. RfSC has an annual award holders event for successful applicants from each call. Again, this is really important for networking, and even if the projects are different from each other, over the years we have seen that there are similarities that many researchers actually understand when they sit together and talk through their own projects. We just had our call 3 award holders event last week. Again, most researchers found it really helpful. So with that, we also have We also look into the capacity building within the research, social care research landscape. So we have early career researchers reviewer schemes through which postdoc and PhD students who are researchers who can actually look at the stage 2 applications as peer reviewers based on their expertise and interest alongside more established peer reviewers, so that they can actually develop their skill of reviewing applications, and then probably if they're interested can get into the committee or even apply for the RfSC call in future. RfSC, we are very aware of the research landscape in the social care research landscape, where third sector organizations, local charities, local authorities work really hard, and we work with NIHR colleagues to support local charities, third sector organizations to be part of the research. So again, we're trying to make it inclusive as much as possible. Next slide, please. RfSC's award holders journey. Many of you would know, many of you hold awards in RFPB, RfSC. We have an established process where once you get an award, you are never left alone. There will be a grant manager who will be helping you throughout the process. And you have some informal and formal ways of reporting so that we can monitor. You have 1-year progress report, you have final report, so that we can work together. But the most important point here is that we are always in conversation, so that if there is any issue that may affect your research for whatever reason, we can actually address it as quickly as possible, so that it doesn't affect or harm your research in any substantial way. We do believe that research management is a collaborative process, and we want to make your experience a happy one, so that once you finish one project, you come back to RfSC for your next funding call. With that note, I will hand the slides back to Sylvia. Thank you.
Thanks, Rifat. I think obviously probably a question we get the most often is my project in scope? And when we talk about social care, we're obviously referring to a huge range of care and support activities to help people to live independently with dignity. And so we know people who draw on care support may include older people, people with disabilities, people with physical and mental illnesses, as well as other range of people. And social care obviously spans across the lifetime. So there's many different points in which there's care and support is being delivered to people. So we just pulled out a few examples from our portfolio. This is not completely comprehensive. And as Rifat highlighted, we're going through the process of call 4 right now. So we are excited that there'll be even more projects joining our portfolio this year. So just to highlight a few, obviously there's an incredible important focus on adults with learning disabilities. We also see a lot of projects or more projects coming in around substance use. And in this case, we use the example of gambling harms. Aging population and care needs is a huge area, very important area. Improving social care practice. So not only do we focus on people who draw on care and support, but also on things about practice as well as workforce issues in the social care landscape. Dementia, as Rifat mentioned, has been obviously a national priority area. So we've been very actively involved in that. So we have quite a few projects that look at the needs of people with dementia, as well as their families, carers, friends, and support networks. And as I mentioned, because social care spans the lifetime from child protection issues also to end-of-life care. So that's also been a huge focus area that we've seen projects come in. And again, going back to the care workers and the workforce, again, a really important issue. So you'll also see dabbled in here some examples of methodology. I know Chris will touch on that a little bit more, but there's definitely lots of qualitative field work. We see a lot of co-production, participatory action research, but just a little bit of a hint of some of the methods that we welcome in terms of applications. I'm going to now hand over to Professor Chris Hatton, who's our interim chair for RfSC, to tell you a little bit more about the perspective from the committee and how to strengthen your application.
That's great. Thanks, Sylvia. Next slide, please. So observations from me. I'm the interim chair, and I guess I've got experience as a panel member, an applicant, deputy chair, and interim chair at the moment. Just a few slides of observations from me that might be helpful. One is that in RfSC, we do expect a high degree of involvement from people who are drawing on social care practitioners, or I guess other relevant groups of people, depending on what the research application is. So we are carefully scrutinizing applications in terms of meaningful involvement, and in terms of applications that also means continuing resourced involvement. So statements of involvement that don't have funding attached to be paying people for their time and input, for example, we would wonder about that. So that involvement is really important because we think it makes the research better, and we think it makes the potential impact of the research stronger. Strong links and collaborations. This might include, for example, people who have social care needs if they're not necessarily using social care at the moment, people who are drawing on social care, carers, that's both kind of family, friends, but also professional carers and social care providers. Those links and collaborations are really important to us. I guess they demonstrate, because the social care provider system can be quite fragmented, particularly compared to healthcare, that people have collaborations so that the research can actually happen practically. But also, again, those kind of collaborations, again, in terms of capacity building, for example, it's really good for people, for example, who are drawing on social care to be co-applicants, for example, if that's their role in the project, to be strong collaborators, to potentially be sort of employing people as research workers. So those strong links and collaborations are really important to us. As with all NIHR programs, demonstrating the potential benefit to people using social care, drawing on social care, and kind of others in that social care infrastructure. That kind of potential benefit is really important to demonstrate. I mean, obviously, the scale of an RfSC project means that that might be kind of at the start of that process. So we're not necessarily looking for instant benefit, you know, at the end of a project, but we'll be looking at an intended pathway towards which that the benefit might happen or should happen. I guess also to say, I think that sometimes things don't work. So if we're evaluating a particular service, for example, we should also bear in mind that, you know, we should allow ourselves to not find a benefit if there isn't one there to be had. And one of the things that we're focusing on quite strongly, because it's so important, and we'll hear more about this from Phoebe in a bit, is having an embedded and thorough equality, diversity and inclusion strategy appropriate to the project. So we are asking all applicants kind of what their application does and their proposed project does in relation to EDI issues and how they're going to go about that. So sort of statements of, yes, we'll recruit diverse groups. Well, which groups are you going to, you know, why and how? Next slide, please, Sylvia. And just to say, as Sylvia's already mentioned, that we welcome the whole spectrum of research methods, from creative and participatory methods through to randomized controlled trials, if you can fit one within the funding envelope, secondary data analysis, and everything in between. We're really keen not to be prescriptive, either explicitly or implicitly when it comes to research methods. The whole range is available to you in terms of funding from RfSC. As Rifat's also mentioned, we're really keen to support research careers in social care. We see RfSC as a really good route to capacity building, to encouraging people to take up a sustainable research career in social care. So principal investigators who are in earlier stages of their research careers, of course, people might be very experienced in terms of kind of practice work, but principal investigators in the earlier stages of their research careers, we really welcome that. And we look for what kind of support they have in the project team to support earlier career researchers, but early career researchers can be PIs. One of the things we see quite a lot, I think, is that people feel they have to demonstrate what people see as value for money by putting loads and loads and loads of work packages into their applications to a point where the application isn't feasible, so it's not actually doable within the time and resources required. And I guess we would really encourage people to be feasible within the resources available. So don't feel you have to say you're going to do more than you can afford or more than you have time for. We would much prefer to see a research proposal that's feasible within the resources available, rather than kind of over-ambitious proposals that cannot be done in the time and money proposed. So you don't have to overpromise for RfSC, I guess. Next and final slide, please, Sylvia. I think one thing that's already been mentioned is that NIHR is really demonstrating a serious and sustained commitment to social care research. The change of name, you know, it is symbolic, but I think it's also more than that. I think it's a demonstration that NIHR has really recognized the importance of social care research and really wants to be increasing its funding, helping to grow the infrastructure for social care research, improving funding, improving support. And RfSC, I think, is a really important component of that, but it's not everything that NIHR is doing and is going to do around social care research. So the way that RfSC is expanding is fantastic, both in terms of more calls and more funding, but also in terms of expanding into children and young people's social care research. I think that that's a really good indicator of the direction of travel for NIHR. But I know that NIHR across the board is working on improving its offer in terms of social care research funding. And I think what that means for us, and as other people have mentioned, is that capacity building is really crucial. You know, there is going to be the possibility for lots of people to have a sustainable and fulfilling social care research career. And we see at RfSC, our job really is supporting people in that. There's going to be so many opportunities in terms of really good social care research, and we really need more good people taking on a social care research career. So hopefully RfSC, we can help you to be part of that. And that's it from me.
Thank you very much. So we've got a little bit of time for questions, and there are quite a few questions in the chat. So I'm going to run through some of them. Some of them, things like the dates for the call 6 will be in the slides that are going to be shared. So that's, I won't ask that question. What are the reasons for applications not being assessed at stage 1? To Rifat and Sylvia.
Yeah, if I just take the question. So the main reason is when we do the scrutiny, we see whether this project is within the remit of the social care, whether the social care trajectory is strong enough and promising enough. So if that's one of the reasons. So the key reason is when it is not within the remit of the RfSC code. Obviously, there are methods and other issues, but whether it is within the remit of social care is the fundamental reason why some of the applications are not assessed in the meeting.
Thank you. Another question. Would integrated health and social care question be acceptable for these calls? Maybe to Chris, I don't know.
I think it kind of relates a bit to Rifat's point about scope. I think the answer would be, it depends. I mean, there is the facility for people to get in contact in advance of an application with the germ of an idea to ask us kind of what we think about that. So yes, it would, I'm afraid it's not very helpful, but it would depend. We're not necessarily rejecting it, but if it feels really kind of health oriented, then it probably wouldn't be for us. But one of the things we can do is, because we're part of the parent sort of RFPB program institutionally, is that we can refer applications that we think could be good RFPB proposals into the RFPB program.
Thank you. The next question from Sophie W. I work for a VCS infrastructure organisation. We're not an academic institution. Can we be the lead organisation for an RfSC funded programme? I don't know what VCS stands for. But anyway. who
Voluntary.
Hi, it's voluntary and community sector. So we're an infrastructure support organisation for the sector, and are keen to start doing more sort of health. Well, we already do quite a lot of research, including the voluntary and community sector and people with lived experience. But one of the challenges for us around this funding is being a principal investigator and, you know, actually being eligible to apply as a lead organisation rather than always having to depend on academic partners. So I just wanted to know whether we are eligible to set ourselves up as approved providers. And if so, how do we go about doing that?
So I can answer this one. So you can apply. I think some of the issues it comes down to around contracting can be tricky when it comes to working with departments that may or may not have R&I or R&D. And that's really been the issue. So we do see a lot of third sector organizations, charity groups applying as co-applicants, as you said, is an issue. So I think I would probably recommend reaching out through the RfSC inbox. We could talk a little bit more about the details around contracting, but this is definitely something we'd like to support. We're happy to. We just have to discuss how that would work in terms of those kind of more administrative things. But we do welcome that from third sector organizations, charity groups. So.
Okay, I'll send an email separately. Thank you.
Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. We sort of, just to keep to time, I'm going to stop the questions now. If anybody on the panel wants to answer any of the questions in the chat, or we can pick them up at the end. And some of the questions you can get the answers to by looking at the website for the RfSC call, which will be in the slides that are sent round. So